For 22 years, the official record said golf's ban on anchored putting was about protecting the game's integrity. But the United States Golf Association made sure you'd never learn that the real target was one unranked club pro named Elliott Marsh, and the money he was about to take from a sponsor's favorite son. That's the story they tell. It isn't what happened. In 1994, Marsh was nobody. A 31-year-old assistant pro at a public course outside Tulsa, missing cuts, barely making rent. Then he changed his stroke. He wedged the putter shaft against his forearm, locked his wrist, and turned putting into something closer to geometry than feel. Suddenly, he wasn't missing. He climbed regional leaderboards. By 1996, he was outscoring players with real backing, real sponsors, real futures. Someone made sure you'd never hear how far that run actually went. Here's what the records were rewritten to hide. The official version says anchored putting got banned in 2016 because it removed skill from the game, too easy, too mechanical, unfair to tradition. That's the surface story, and it's wrong. Rule 14.1b didn't appear because a committee suddenly noticed anchoring existed. Anchored strokes had been legal, visible, and used quietly for over a decade before that ban. What changed in 2016 wasn't the technique. It was who was using it well enough to threaten the wrong leaderboard. Marsh had spent years grinding through mini-tour no one televised, refining the exact method the rule would later outlaw. And in the 2 years before the ban, he'd finally qualified to tee it up against players the tour actually marketed. That's the first crack. The timing doesn't fit the explanation. Rules don't usually arrive the year an outsider becomes dangerous, unless the danger was the point. You'd expect the obvious explanation, that anchoring really was too easy, so of course they banned it eventually, and Marsh just got caught in the timing. That's what most people accept because it's simpler than asking who benefited. But the obvious explanation doesn't hold. If anchoring were the problem, the ban would have come when the technique first spread through the amateur ranks in the late 1990s, when thousands of golfers were already using it. It didn't. It came only after Marsh's results started drawing attention from a sponsor who had a very different golfer under contract, a golfer whose deal was tied to traditional mechanics, whose endorsement contract explicitly required he be marketed as the last pure swing in the sport. That phrase was real. It was in his contract. And it meant Marsh's rise wasn't just inconvenient. It was a liability. Here's what they actually buried. Internal USGA correspondence, surfaced years later in an unrelated licensing dispute, then quietly resealed under a confidentiality order, shows equipment consultants were asked to evaluate anchored strokes 18 months before the public rule was even proposed. Not for fairness. For marketability risk. One line, still uncomfortable to read today, called anchoring, a threat to the traditional image sponsors are paying for. Marsh is never named directly. He didn't need to be. He was the only unsponsored player using the method at a competitive level, which meant he was the only one with nothing to lose by fighting the ban and nothing to gain from staying quiet if he did. So they moved fast. The rule passed. Marsh's method became illegal in every sanctioned event worldwide within a single ruling cycle. 22 years of development erased by a paragraph. He never got the endorsement. He never got the platform. He got a rule with his fingerprints scrubbed out of it. What this changes is simple and ugly. It means at least one modern golf rule wasn't written to protect the sport. It was written to protect a contract. It cost Marsh the only competitive advantage he ever built, at the exact moment it started working. It cost the sport an honest conversation about who gets to shape its own history and who just gets used as the reason. You never heard his name because the ban was framed as a technical correction, not a business decision, and technical corrections don't need villains or victims, just committees. Marsh still teaches at that same public course outside Tulsa. He doesn't talk about the ban publicly anymore. So what happened to the 18 months of files between the private evaluation and the public rule? Nobody outside that resealed dispute has ever seen them in full. Somewhere, that record still exists. The question isn't whether Elliott Marsh's swing was too good. It's who decided that mattered more than the truth, and what else they're still deciding for you right now.